The gym smelled like decades of teenage sweat masked by industrial cleaner and cheap wine. String lights sagged between basketball hoops, casting shadows that made the Desert Sky Class of 2005 20-year reunion banner look more ominous than celebratory. Jake Morrison stood at the center of a widening circle, 40-plus former classmates, forming a human coliseum around him, and realized with sickening clarity that coming here was the worst decision he'd made since marrying Brittany in the first place. Still in that apartment in Maryvale, Brittany's voice carried across the gym floor with the precision of a prosecutor. She wore red designer red, the kind that cost more than Jake's monthly rent, and diamonds that caught the string lights like tiny accusatory fingers. How do three girls share one bedroom in that place? His throat closed. Every word he'd rehearsed in the car evaporated. They're happy, Brittany. The lie came out quiet, defensive. They have everything they need. Her smile sharpened. She turned to the man beside her, Richard Walker, tech billionaire second husband, the reason she'd walked away from their daughters 4 years ago. His suit probably cost more than Jake's car. Honey, didn't you say our guest suite alone is bigger than a 2-bedroom apartment in that neighborhood? Richard's expression radiated condescending sympathy. It's admirable, really. Teaching. The pause before that last word lasted a lifetime. Not everyone has the patience for that kind of work. Cell phones appeared. Someone was recording. Jake felt heat crawl up his neck, that familiar shame that had lived in his chest since the divorce, since before the divorce, since the first time Brittany looked at their bank account, and he saw disappointment settle into her eyes like sediment. 4 hours earlier, he'd stood in front of his bathroom mirror and seen exactly what everyone here would see. The Target blazer from 2022 worn at the elbows, jeans because he couldn't afford dress pants, shoes with a hole in the sole cardboard wedged inside to keep water out when it rained. 35 years old and he looked 50. Exhaustion carved into lines around his eyes, gray, threading through hair that used to be dark brown. Daddy, you have to go. Lily's voice had echoed from the living room, where all 3 girls bounced on the second-hand couch like it was Christmas morning. You can't skip your reunion. Yeah, Mia added, blonde curls flying. You went to school there forever ago. You have to see your old friends. Zoe had looked at him with those devastating blue eyes, 7 years old, and already carrying weight no child should bear. Maybe you'll meet someone pretty, someone who will be nice to us. She'd pressed her small hand to his cheek. You deserve that, Daddy. He'd knelt, pulled all 3 into his arms, breathing in their shampoo and crayon smell. The apartment might be cramped, 3 twin beds crammed into 1 bedroom, toys organized in plastic bins from Dollar Tree, peeling paint on the kitchen cabinets, but it was full of this, love that didn't fit on a balance sheet. I already have 3 pretty girls, the prettiest girls in the world. I don't need anyone else. Lily had touched his face with the gravity of someone much older. You look sad sometimes, Daddy, when you think we're not watching. We want you to be happy. That had broken something inside him. His 7-year-old daughter had been monitoring his emotional state, worrying about him, when she should be worrying about which toy to play with next. Now standing in this gym with Brittany dismantling him piece by public piece, he understood why he'd come. Not for himself, for them. Because his father's voice lived in his head, words spoken 20 years ago when Jake was 15 and afraid to try out for the school play. The bravest thing a man can do is show up even when he's scared. He'd sat in his 2008 Honda Civic in the parking lot for 10 minutes, watching BMWs and Teslas arrive, delivering successful alumni in designer clothes and expensive watches. His odometer read 217, 394 miles. The engine made a concerning sound every morning. The air conditioning had died 2 summers ago, but it ran. and that was enough. "Okay, Dad," he'd whispered to his reflection in the rearview mirror. "I'm showing up." The gym doors had opened. Music and laughter spilled out the sound of people who'd made something of themselves. He'd stepped through into the noise and judgment because showing up mattered more than showing off. His father had taught him that, and his father had been right about most things before the heart attack took him when Jake was 60. Tom Bradley had been the first to corner him. Former quarterback, now tech entrepreneur, according to his name tag expensive Rolex catching the light with every gesture. "Jake Morrison, man, it's been forever. What are you up to these days?" "I teach middle school English over at Lincoln." Tom's smile had faltered, just for a second, but Jake caught it. "That's really noble, man. Teaching is important." The subtext screamed, "but not lucrative." "I just sold my third startup, 8 figures." "Congratulations." Jake meant it. He didn't begrudge anyone their success. "Thanks, man. You married kids?" "Divorced. 3 daughters. Triplets, actually." Tom's face had shifted to genuine sympathy. "Triplets, Jesus, Jake. That's rough. How do you even afford that on a teacher's salary?" The question hit like a fist to the solar plexus. Before Jake could answer, he'd heard that voice. The one that used to promise forever. That said, "I love you 1,000 times." That walked away without looking back. "Jake. Oh my God. Jake Morrison." Brittany had materialized from the crowd like a beautiful nightmare. Air kiss, expensive perfume, overwhelming. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, hair professionally styled, makeup perfect. That red dress probably worth more than his entire wardrobe. Next to her, Richard Walker stood silent and commanding, the quiet menace of someone who'd never worried about money. "You look exactly the same." Her tone suggested this was an insult. "Still teaching at Lincoln, I heard." "Yeah, still there." Her smile turned to the gathering crowd. "How sweet. Still in that little apartment in Maryvale, too, right?" People were listening now. The circle had formed without Jake noticing, classmates, drawn to drama like moths to flame. He felt himself shrinking shoulders, curving inward, the posture of defeat he'd worked so hard to avoid. "And the girls?" Brittany's voice carried to the back of the crowd. "Grace, Faith, and Hope, right?" She said their names like trying to remember strangers. "They must be, 7 now? Lily, Mia, and Zoe." He forced strength into his voice. "They're 7. They're wonderful. 3 growing girls in 1 bedroom." She addressed the audience now, not him. "I can't even imagine. Richard and I have a 7-bedroom house with a pool." Her pause let that sink in. "Those girls could have had so much more if—" She stopped, but the implication detonated in the silence. If their father had been enough, if he'd provided, if he'd been worth staying for. Richard stepped forward, playing his role perfectly. "The Honda out there that's yours, isn't it? The '08 Civic." Polite interest wrapped around condescension. "That's remarkable longevity. 200,000 miles at least." Brittany's voice turned nostalgic. "Remember when it broke down on our anniversary? That was 100,000 miles ago." Jake's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Every defense sounded like an excuse. Yes, he was poor. Yes, his daughters shared a bedroom. Yes, he drove a car that should have died years ago. But they were happy. They were loved. Didn't that matter? Apparently not. Not here, where success was measured in square footage and stock portfolios. His eyes stung. He was going to cry in front of everyone. Worse, he was going to run. The exit was 20 feet away. He could make it. Drive home to his cramped apartment and his sleeping daughters and pretend this never happened. Then a voice cut through the humiliation, warm and confident and impossibly kind. "Jake, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." A woman appeared at his side like an answer to a prayer he didn't know he'd made. She linked her arm through his naturally, like she'd done it 1,000 times, and suddenly he could breathe again. She wore a teal wrap dress, elegant but not showy, and simple jewelry that suggested wealth without screaming it. Her presence shifted the energy of the room immediately. Confidence radiated from her like heat. She turned to Brittany with a smile that could cut glass. "Sorry I'm late. The board meeting ran over, you know how it is?" She extended her hand to Brittany. "Claire Bennett. You must be Brittany. Jake's told me so much about you." Brittany's smile froze. "Claire Bennett. The Claire Bennett Event Solutions. Yes. Have we met?" "No, but I know your work." Brittany's recovery was smooth, but Jake caught the flash of uncertainty. "You planned the governor's inauguration last year, and the tech summit Richard attended." Richard's interest peaked visibly. "Bennett Event Solutions. I've been trying to book you for our annual gala for 2 years. Your waiting list is legendary." Claire's smile remained pleasant. "It's been busy, but rewarding." Jake stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. Claire Bennett. They'd gone to Desert Sky together. He had vague memories of her from student council prom committee, always surrounded by friends. But they'd never spoken. Why was she? "We've been together 6 months now." Claire said it casually, like stating the weather. Her hand on his arm tightened fractionally. A message. "Play along." His eyes widened, but he kept his mouth shut. The crowd's energy shifted. People who'd been watching his humiliation with pity now looked curious to reassessing. "The girls are remarkable," Claire addressed Brittany directly. "Lily wants piano lessons. She has such a good ear. Mia's interested in art classes, and Zoe loves gymnastics. We just got them new bikes last month for their birthday." Brittany's mask cracked. "How generous of you to help with someone else's children." "They're Jake's children." Claire's correction was gentle but firm. "Which means they're important to me. When you love someone, you love all of them, including their family." The words landed like a slap. Brittany had abandoned her family. Claire's statement highlighted that abandonment without saying it explicitly. Richard attempted to regain control. "Teaching and event planning. That's quite a combination." "It is." Claire looked at Jake, and he saw something in her eyes he couldn't identify. "Jake builds young minds. I build experiences. Both require patience, creativity, and seeing potential others miss." Her gaze held his. "He's very good at seeing potential." His chest tightened. Who was this woman? Why was she doing this? "Let's get drinks." Claire steered him away smoothly, and the crowd parted. Brittany's voice rose behind them, something sharp and defensive, but they were already moving toward the hallway, leaving the gym and its judgment behind. The hallway hit him with fluorescent brightness and sudden quiet. Muffled music thumped through the walls. A vending machine hummed in the corner. Claire released his arm and turned to face him. "What just happened?" His voice came out raw. "Who are you?" "Claire Bennett. We went to Desert Sky together. Class of '05. "I know, but..." He shook his head, trying to make sense of it. "We've been together 6 months. We barely spoke in high school." "I know." She leaned against the wall, studying him with those impossibly calm eyes. "But you were being humiliated in there. That woman was tearing you down in front of everyone, and someone needed to stop it. By lying, by pretending to be my girlfriend, by giving you armor." Yes. He should be angry. He should be offended. Instead, he felt something dangerously close to gratitude. Why would you do that for me?" She was quiet for a moment. The vending machine hummed. Someone laughed in the gym. The ordinary sounds of a world that kept spinning while his had stopped. "Do you remember 11th grade AP English?" The subject changed through him. "Yeah. You wrote a paper about Romeo and Juliet, about how the real tragedy wasn't their deaths. It was that they were brave enough to love, but the world wasn't brave enough to let them." Memory surfaced slowly. Mrs. Henderson's class. Junior year. He'd stayed up until 3 in the morning, finishing that essay, pouring something honest onto the page. I remember that paper, but I don't remember you being in that class. I sat 3 rows behind you, row 4, seat 2. Her voice softened. Mrs. Henderson cried when she read it aloud. She paused. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I had a crush on you for all of junior year. The world tilted. You had a crush on me. I was too scared to talk to you. We were from different worlds. You worked at the Safeway on weekends. I was student council. She looked down. My dad used to say, she stopped. My dad used to say, the bravest thing a man can do is show up even when he's scared. The words came automatically muscle memory from childhood. I didn't understand that until I became a father. Her eyes met his. You showed up tonight. Even scared. He also said, Jake's throat tightened. A good woman sees you when you can't see yourself. I think maybe that's what just happened. The air between them changed, charged with something he didn't understand but felt in his chest, his lungs, the base of his spine. Can I meet your daughters? She asked it quietly. If you'd let me. He should say no. This was insane. She was lying to a room full of people. He barely knew her. But standing in this hallway looking at the woman who'd just saved him from complete humiliation, he found himself nodding. Okay. She smiled. Okay. He drove home through empty Phoenix streets, the gym and its judgment shrinking in his rearview mirror. His hands shook on the steering wheel. Adrenaline crash, probably, or delayed shock, or the simple weight of realizing how close he'd come to breaking down in public, Mrs. Lopez was asleep on his couch when he arrived, game show playing on mute. He paid her his last 20 until Friday, and she shuffled back to her apartment next door, leaving him alone with the quiet. He checked on the girls. 3 twin beds crammed into the smaller bedroom, barely a foot of space between them. Lily sprawled across her mattress, one arm hanging off the side. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one she'd had since she was 3. Zoe's mouth hung open slightly, that hidden dimple visible even in sleep. His daughters. His entire world condensed into 3 7-year-old bodies that breathed in synchronization, that laughed at his terrible jokes, that worried about him when they should be worrying about nothing. He sat at the kitchen table, looked around at what Brittany had seen tonight. Worn furniture from Goodwill, peeling paint on the cabinets he kept meaning to fix, crack in the bathroom mirror that spider-webbed across his reflection. The refrigerator hummed loud enough to wake him at night. The sink dripped. The living room carpet had a stain from when Mia spilled grape juice 2 years ago that no amount of scrubbing could remove. But the walls were covered in the girls' artwork. Photos of happy moments, the zoo, the park, Christmas morning with presents wrapped in newspaper because he'd run out of wrapping paper. A magnet from Carol that said, World's Best Dad. Lily's crayon drawing of their family. 4 stick figures holding hands, all smiling. Maybe Brittany was right. The thought came unbidden. Maybe they do deserve more. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. I meant what I said. Coffee this week. Let the girls decide if they like me. No pressure. See. He stared at the text, read it 3 times, looked at his daughter's bedroom door. This was crazy. Claire Bennett, successful, beautiful, confident, wanting to meet his daughters, wanting to continue this charade or whatever it was. He should decline politely, should protect his girls from more disappointment, more abandonment, more people who left. But Lily's voice echoed in his head. You look sad sometimes, Daddy, when you think we're not watching, and his father's voice older and deeper. The bravest thing a man can do is show up. He typed slowly, thumb hovering over send for a full minute before he pressed it. Sunday, 2 p.m. There's a coffee shop on Central. The girls would like to meet you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I'll be there. He set the phone down, checked on the girls one more time, still sleeping, still safe, still his. Went to his bathroom and studied himself in the cracked mirror. Okay, Dad, he whispered. I'm still showing up. Sunday arrived wrapped in October sunshine and pre-coffee shop panic. The girls had woken up at 6, too excited to sleep, asking questions at machine gun pace while Jake attempted to make pancakes without burning them. Is she pretty? Zoe asked for the 5th time. Very pretty. Is she nice? Mia wanted to know. She seems nice, but you 3 will decide that. Lily, always the protector, always the oldest, even though they were technically the same age, looked at him seriously. We want you to have a friend, Daddy. You need friends. Friends. That's what Claire had called herself. Not girlfriend, not partner, not anything that carried weight or expectation. Just a friend who'd lied convincingly to save him from public humiliation. Dutch Bros Coffee on Central was packed with Sunday afternoon families. Jake spotted a corner table and claimed it before someone else could. The girls bounced in their seats, blonde curls identical, making the distinctive Morrison triplet chaos that made people smile. Then Claire walked in. She wore jeans and a sweater, hair in a ponytail, no makeup that Jake could see. Approachable, non-threatening, the opposite of her reunion appearance. She spotted them and smiled genuine warmth that reached her eyes, and Jake's chest did something complicated. She slid into the booth. Hi. You must be Lily, Mia, and Zoe. I've heard so much about you. You're the lady from Daddy's reunion. Lily's statement carried implied questions. I am. I'm Claire. It's very nice to meet you. You're very pretty. Mia's observation landed with the bluntness of childhood. Thank you. You're all very pretty too. We're identical. Zoe leaned forward, testing. But Daddy can always tell us apart. Can you tell us apart? Claire studied them thoughtfully. Didn't condescend. Didn't dismiss. Treated the question like it mattered. Not yet. But I'd like to learn. Will you teach me? Something in Jake's chest unlocked. The girls relaxed incrementally, shoulders dropping, smiles emerging. She'd passed the first test. Over hot chocolates and coffee, Claire asked questions about school favorite subjects, what they wanted to be when they grew up. She listened. Actually listened, not the performative attention adults sometimes gave children. When Mia talked about wanting to be a vet, Claire asked about her favorite animals. When Zoe mentioned her dream of being a princess scientist, Claire didn't laugh, just nodded and said, "That's allowed. You can be anything you want." An hour passed, then another. Jake watched his daughters fall for this woman who'd appeared out of nowhere, who'd lied for him, who treated his children like people worth knowing. Eventually, the girls needed the bathroom. All 3 went together. They did everything together, leaving Jake and Claire alone at the table. They're wonderful, she said quietly. Thank you. I mean it. You've done an incredible job. The compliment landed heavier than she probably intended. 4 years of doubt, of wondering if he was enough, if they needed more than he could give. And here was someone who saw what he'd built and called it wonderful. They walked to the parking lot together. The girls raced ahead to the small playground area, burning off sugar and excitement. Phoenix sunshine painted everything gold. October in the desert. Perfect temperature, perfect light, perfect moment. So, he kept his eyes on his daughters, safer than looking at her. What is this? Are we still pretending? Or... I don't know. She stopped walking, forced him to look at her. I didn't plan past Friday night, but I like talking to you. I liked watching you with your daughters just now. I haven't thought about dating in 4 years. The admission came out rough. Haven't had time. haven't wanted to bring someone into their lives who might leave. He watched Lily push Zoe on the swing. Brittany left when they were 3, just walked away. Lily asked me 6 months ago why they don't have a mommy. I didn't know what to say. What did you say? That they had one, but she chose a different life. That some people aren't ready to be parents. His throat closed. I can't do that to them again. Claire was quiet for a long moment. The girls' laughter carried across the parking lot. A car drove past, the ordinary world continuing around them while they stood suspended in this conversation that felt too important to rush. I understand that. Her voice held something he couldn't identify. But maybe I'd like to see where this goes. If you're interested. If you're interested. Like she wasn't impossibly out of his league. Like a successful businesswoman might actually want to date a broke teacher with 3 kids and a car held together by hope and duct tape. Let me earn their trust. She met his eyes. And yours. He should say no. Should protect himself. Protect his daughters. Protect the fragile stability they'd built. But standing in this parking lot with Phoenix sunshine warming his shoulders, watching this woman who'd appeared like something out of a dream, he found himself nodding. Okay. Her smile could have powered the city grid. 4 years earlier, Jake had sat in a downtown attorney's office while his marriage died in fluorescent lighting and legalese. My client is requesting full custody. Brittany's lawyer had delivered it without emotion. Mrs. Morrison believes the children would be better served in her care. He'd looked at Brittany across that conference table, the woman he'd met in college, married in a small ceremony, built a life with. You want custody? She couldn't meet his eyes. I think it's best. 3 weeks later, his phone rang at 11 p.m. He was grading papers at their kitchen table. 3-year-old triplets finally asleep after 2 hours of bedtime negotiations. Brittany's voice came through the speaker, cold and final. I can't do this, Jake. 3 kids. It's too much. You keep them. Brittany, they're our daughters. I'm done. Richard's offered me something better and I'm taking it. My lawyer will send papers. You can have full custody. I'm not paying child support. I'm not doing visitation. I'm out. They're 3 years old. They need their mother. They need someone who wants to be a mother. That's not me. It never was. The line went dead. He'd sat there for an hour, phone in hand, trying to understand how someone walked away from their children, trying to figure out how to tell 3 toddlers that mommy wasn't coming back. That first night alone with them had been chaos. Lily crying for mommy, Mia refusing to sleep, Zoe screaming every time he left her line of sight. He had no idea how to comfort them. No idea what he was doing. No idea how to be both parents at once. Where's mommy? Lily had sobbed against his chest. He'd held all 3 fighting his own tears. Mommy had to go away, sweetie. But Daddy's here. Daddy's always going to be here. It was the only promise he knew how to keep. The first year had been brutal. Daycare costs ate his entire salary. He worked summer school for an extra $2,000. Learned to cook cheap meals that would stretch for days, spaghetti, rice, and beans pancakes for dinner when they ran out of everything else. He'd learned to braid hair from YouTube videos at midnight laundry spinning in the apartment building's basement while he practiced on Lily's hair. She'd sat patient and trusting while he fumbled with elastics and bobby pins making braids that looked like disasters, but she wore them proudly anyway. His car had broken down in the Walmart parking lot one sweltering July afternoon. The repair estimate, $800. He had $200 in his account. He'd sat in the driver's seat and cried while the girls watched from the back, Lily asking why Daddy was sad, and he'd lied and said he wasn't just trying to figure something out. But slowly, incredibly, he'd discovered he was good at this. Being a father. The girls were happy. They didn't care about the apartment being small or the furniture being secondhand or dinner coming from Dollar Tree. They cared that Daddy read stories every night, that he showed up to every school event, that he knew Lily liked her sandwiches without crust, that Mia was allergic to strawberries, that Zoe only ate sandwiches cut diagonally. By year 4, they had a rhythm, poor but stable, struggling but managing. Then 6 months ago, Lily had asked the question that changed everything. "Daddy, why don't we have a mommy?" He'd knelt down eye level. "You did have a mommy, but she decided she needed to live a different life. Other kids have mommies and daddies. We only have you. Is that not enough? You tell me, are you happy?" She'd thrown her arms around him. "You're the best daddy in the world, but sometimes I wish you had someone to help you. You look so tired." She'd been watching him struggle, noticing his exhaustion, worrying about him when she should be worrying about nothing. Maybe it was time to try. Not for himself, for them. 3 months passed. November turned to December, turned to January. Phoenix weather shifted from scorching to pleasant to almost cold. Claire became part of their lives so naturally Jake barely noticed the transition. She showed up at Zoe's soccer games, with snacks for the whole team cheering louder than any other parent. She helped with homework while baking cookies, turning measuring cups into fraction lessons that made Mia finally understand why math mattered. She appeared at the Fry's where Jake shopped cart full of groceries she'd bought too much of, leaving them at his door with a note that said simply, "Thought you might need these." She came to the school Christmas program, sat next to Jake in the auditorium, held his hand when the girls sang Jingle Bells off-key and proud. She helped them make homemade Christmas cards, gluing glitter everywhere, laughing when Lily dumped an entire bottle on one card and declared it fancy. The apartment filled with her presents, shoes by the door, coffee mug in the sink. Laughter that made the cramped space feel bigger. One evening in early January, Jake cooked spaghetti while Claire helped the girls with craft projects at the kitchen table. His phone had dinged. Paycheck notification. He'd opened it, watched the blood drain from his face. Insufficient funds. Transaction reversed. His paycheck had bounced. The phone rang immediately. Landlord. Rent was due 3 days ago. If Jake couldn't pay by end of week, eviction proceedings would begin. He'd set the phone down carefully, stared at the pasta water boiling, thought about 3 daughters in 1 bedroom and nowhere else to go, thought about custody battles and judges and what Brittany's lawyer could do with evidence of homelessness. "You don't have to keep doing this." The words came out strangled. Claire looked up from her glitter. "Doing what?" "Showing up, helping. The groceries." He turned from the stove. "I saw the receipt in the bag last week. You spent $200. I was at the store, thought you might need things." "Claire." He gripped the counter. "I don't want to be a charity case." She stood cross to him, took his hands. "You're not. You're someone I care about." Her voice carried weight. "Let me help." Later that night, after the girls were asleep, they sat on his worn couch with cheap wine. String lights Jake had hung for Christmas still glowed above them. He'd meant to take them down, but the girls liked them, so they stayed. "Why are you really here?" he asked it quietly. "You could date anyone. Rich men. Successful men." "I don't want rich men." "Why me?" She was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. The world kept turning. "Because 18 years ago you wrote something that showed me who you were." A high school paper. That paper showed me someone who understood. Love wasn't about deserving it, it was about being brave enough to accept it. She set her wine down. "I wanted to know that person. And now that I do." Her voice dropped. "I'm here because I'm falling in love with you." The wine glass slipped in his hand. He caught it before it fell. "You don't have to say it back." She continued before he could speak. "I know this is complicated. I know you're scared. But I needed you to know I'm not here out of pity. I'm terrified." The admission tore out of him. "Terrified of screwing this up. of you realizing what being with me really means, the struggle, the stress, the poverty. Jake. She made him look at her. I see what your life is like. I'm not leaving. His hands shook. 4 years of being alone, of being everything to everyone, of carrying every burden himself, and here was someone offering to share the weight. I'm falling in love with you too. His voice cracked. I'm so scared, but I'm falling. She kissed him then. Gentle, certain, full of promise. From the hallway came 3 synchronized voices. They're kissing. Jake and Claire pulled apart laughing. 3 pajama-clad girls rushed in, throwing themselves onto the couch. Toy pieces from the dollhouse he'd been assembling scattered. Everyone laughed. Were you 3 supposed to be asleep? We were thirsty, and we heard talking. Zoe looked at Claire seriously. Does this mean you're staying forever? Claire's answer came carefully honestly. Let's start with right now and see where it goes. Is that okay? Zoe thought about it. Nodded. That's okay, right now is good. They all piled together on the worn couch, 3 blonde girls. 1 exhausted father. 1 woman who'd appeared like an answer to prayers he'd been too scared to speak. String lights glowed above them. Outside, Phoenix slept. Inside, something fragile and precious was being built. 6 months after the reunion, Jake stood in his kitchen making pancakes for the girls' 8th birthday breakfast. The recipe was perfect now. 4 years of practice had taught him exactly how much batter made them fluffy without being raw in the middle. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Jake, it's Brittany. The spatula froze mid-flip. 4 years of silence, and her voice still had the power to stop his world. Brittany. I've been thinking about the girls. I made a mistake. I want to see them. Pancake batter dripped onto the stove, started smoking. He set the bowl down carefully, like any sudden movement might detonate something. What do you want? I want to be part of their lives. I've been in therapy. I've worked through things. Her voice carried practiced emotion. I'm their mother, Jake. I have rights. You gave up your rights. You signed papers 4 years ago. I was in a bad place. Those girls deserve to know their mother. They have everything they need. Her voice turned sharp. Do they, living in poverty with a single father? I saw how you were dressed at the reunion, Jake. Our daughters deserve better. We're not rich, but they're happy. I can give them more, private schools, opportunities. She paused. My lawyer says I can petition for partial custody. The world tilted. You abandoned them. I'm their biological mother. I have legal standing. Her voice went cold, professional, final. Figure it out, Jake. My lawyer will contact you. The line went dead. Daddy. Lily stood in the doorway in her birthday pajamas. The pancakes are burning. Smoke poured from the griddle. The alarm started beeping. Jake stood frozen, phone in hand, watching his world collapse for the second time. The smoke alarm shrieked. Jake's hand moved on autopilot, grabbed the pan, dumped it in the sink, twisted the faucet. Steam hissed up in a cloud that smelled like failure and burnt batter. Lily stood in the doorway, watching him with those careful eyes, the ones that said she understood more than an 8-year-old should. It's okay, Daddy. We can have cereal. He pulled her into a hug, breathing hard, phone still clutched in his other hand. Brittany's voice echoed in his skull. My lawyer will contact you. 4 years of peace, of building something stable from nothing, and she was going to tear it all down because she'd seen him happy at a reunion, because she couldn't stand that he'd moved on. An hour later, the girls were at Mrs. Lopez's for their birthday playdate cake and presents, with her grandkids' squealing laughter that drifted through the thin walls. Claire arrived to find Jake sitting at the kitchen table staring at his laptop screen. Legal notice email. Already sent. Already real. She crossed to the sink without a word, started scrubbing the burned pan. He watched her hands work capable. certain the same hands that had held his daughters while teaching them fractions that had threaded through his own while watching Christmas programs that were choosing to stay when leaving would be so much easier. I can't afford a lawyer. His voice came out hollow. I can barely afford rent. How am I supposed to fight someone married to a billionaire? You're not fighting alone. She didn't look up from the pan. Claire, this isn't your... The pan hit the sink with a clang. She turned soapy hands dripping. Stop. Those girls are part of my life now, too. I'm not letting anyone take them from you. I can't ask you to pay for a lawyer. This could cost tens of thousands. You're not asking. She crossed to him, gripped his shoulders. I'm insisting. I'll help. I'll pay for the lawyer. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. Why? The question broke. Why would you do this? Because 6 months ago you were being humiliated and I couldn't stand by. Her voice turned fierce. I'm still not standing by. I'm standing with you. He pulled her down, buried his face in her shoulder, and let himself break for exactly 30 seconds. Then he pulled it together, because that's what fathers did. They broke in private and rebuilt before anyone noticed. The family law office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower downtown. Too expensive, too polished. Jennifer Parker's credentials covered an entire wall. Stanford Law Family Court Specialist, 87% success rate in custody cases. She wore a suit that probably cost more than Jake's monthly salary and shook his hand with the grip of someone who'd won more battles than she'd lost. Across the conference table sat Brittany and Richard, and their lawyer. William Bradford looked like he'd been cast for the role, silver hair, expensive suit, the quiet menace of someone who billed $800 an hour and earned every penny. He had a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Jake's car and a smile that never reached his eyes. The mediator, tired, overworked already. Defeated, explained the situation. Brittany petitioning for partial custody, supervised visits initially, gradual integration into the girls' lives. Bradford opened with precision. My client has undergone extensive therapy for postpartum depression that led to her difficult decision 4 years ago. She's now financially stable, has a suitable home, and is ready to be a mother. Jennifer Parker didn't miss a beat. Your client didn't have postpartum depression. She had a billionaire proposal. She abandoned 3 3-year-old children and signed away all parental rights. She hasn't sent a birthday card in 4 years. Jake couldn't stay silent. You don't want them. You want to win. Brittany's practiced hurt was Oscar-worthy. I saw you raising my daughters in poverty, our daughters, and they're happy. She turned to the mediator, tears threatening. Real ones this time, or she'd gotten better at faking. 3 girls sharing 1 bedroom in Maryvale, the most dangerous neighborhood in Phoenix. No college funds. A father who works 60 hours a week and still can't make ends meet. The mediator shuffled papers, exhaustion in every line of his body. We're clearly not reaching agreement. This will proceed to formal custody hearing. Bradford gathered his leather portfolio. We'll see you in court, Mr. Morrison. Jake left the building feeling like he'd been hollowed out. Claire's hand in his was the only thing keeping him from floating away entirely. That evening, he came home to find his kitchen transformed into a disaster zone. Flour everywhere on the counters. The floor. Claire's hair. All 3 girls covered in chocolate chips and laughter mixing bowl between them like a science experiment gone beautifully wrong. Daddy, they shouted in unison. We're making cookies for you. He stood in the doorway, suit jacket still on, tie loosened, and felt something crack open in his chest. This chaos, this joy, this love that didn't fit in bank accounts or square footage. This was what Brittany would never understand. I can see that, and apparently the floor, the walls, and Claire. Claire turned flour in her hair, smile incandescent. They're very enthusiastic bakers. Try one. Zoe thrust a misshapen cookie at him. We made them ourselves. He bit into pure sugar and love and imperfection. This is the best cookie I've ever had. Really? Mia's face lit up. Really, because you made it. He pulled all three into a hug, flour transferring to his suit. He didn't care. Let Brittany have her 7-bedroom mansion. He had this. Thank you, he said to Claire over their heads. She understood. Always. That night, after the girls were asleep, Claire folded their laundry while Jake changed out of his suit. Domestic intimacy in the small bedroom they pretended they didn't share most nights now. She worked methodically, matching socks, folding tiny shirts, organizing by child, with the precision she brought to everything. Rebecca called today, my business partner. He paused, half-unbuttoned shirt. What did she say? That I'm in too deep? That fighting a billionaire could cost me corporate clients? That I should think about my business? His stomach dropped. Is she right? Richard Walker called me 3 weeks ago. She kept folding, didn't look up. Offered me a $200,000 contract for his annual gala if I'd reconsider my involvement with you. The room tilted. What? I told him I'm not for sale. She met his eyes finally. Neither are you. Neither is our family. That contract could have changed everything for your business. It would have cost me everything that matters. She set down Mia's jeans. So I hired a private investigator instead, to find dirt on them. Claire, if they want to fight dirty, we'll fight dirty. Her voice carried steel he'd never heard before. I'm not losing you. I'm not losing those girls. Whatever it takes. He crossed to her, stopped her hands, pulled her close. She melted into him, and for a moment they just stood there, two people choosing each other in a world that made that choice as hard as possible. You're not a stranger, he whispered into her hair. You're family. Then let me fight for our family. The custody hearing was scheduled for June, 2 months away. 2 months of waiting, of watching his daughters laugh and play and live their lives while he carried the secret terror that it could all be taken away. Jennifer Parker prepared them methodically. School records showing the girls thriving. Teacher testimonies. Neighbor statements. Jake's mother flying in from Scottsdale to testify. Building a case from ordinary proof of extraordinary love. But Brittany had money. Money bought better lawyers, better expert witnesses, better everything. The courtroom smelled like furniture polish and institutional judgment. Maricopa County Family Court, downtown Phoenix. Judge Patricia Reynolds presiding, 50s sharp eyes, reputation for not tolerating bullshit from anyone, regardless of their bank account. The gallery was packed. Jake's former students filled 3 rows, showing up for the teacher who'd shown up for them. Neighbors. Principal Harris, Mrs. Lopez in her Sunday best. On Brittany's side, society friends in designer clothes looking like they'd wandered into the wrong venue and couldn't find the exit. Bradford opened with surgical precision. Poverty porn disguised as concern. Photos of Jake's apartment blown up on screens, the cramped bedroom, the worn furniture, the peeling paint. Salary records, neighborhood crime statistics, everything packaged to say, these children deserve better. Then Brittany took the stand. She'd dressed carefully, navy Chanel minimal jewelry, hair pulled back to look maternal instead of glamorous. Bradford walked her through 4 years of regret and growth. The therapy she'd undergone. The postpartum depression that she now understood had clouded her judgment. Mrs. Walker, can you tell the court why you made the decision you did 4 years ago? She dabbed her eyes. Real tears or excellent acting? Jake couldn't tell anymore. I was drowning. Postpartum depression is real and I didn't get help. I made a terrible mistake walking away from my daughters. But I've done the work now. 2 years of therapy. I'm ready to be their mother. Jennifer Parker's cross-examination was scalpel sharp. Mrs. Walker, You mentioned postpartum depression. Do you have medical records therapy notes from 2021? I didn't seek treatment then. I was ashamed. But you married Mr. Richard Walker 3 months after abandoning your children. That's remarkably fast recovery. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Parker. Richard took the stand next, testified about resources they could provide. Private schools, college funds, opportunities, everything money could buy delivered in his condescending nice guy tone that made wealth sound like virtue. The morning session ended with Brittany's case looking polished and practiced and completely heartless. Jake barely tasted lunch. Claire held his hand under the table at a diner 2 blocks from the courthouse. Jennifer Parker reviewed afternoon strategy, but his mind kept circling back to one question. What if money won? What if judges decided square footage mattered more than showing up? The afternoon session opened with Jake's defense. Principal Harris testified first. 15 years in education, never seen a more devoted parent. Every conference, every concert, every game. Last year, Jake volunteered for all 3 field trips, so each daughter got individual time with him. Mrs. Lopez came next. Elderly neighbor in a floral dress, hands shaking slightly, but voice steady. I've lived next to Jake for 4 years. Those girls are loved. They run home from the bus stop because they can't wait to see their daddy. That's not poverty, that's richness. Carol Morrison took the stand. Jake's mother still beautiful at 67, still carrying the strength that had raised him after his father died. My son learned to be a father by watching his father. When my husband died, Jake was 16. He stepped up, helped raise his younger sister. He knows what real love looks like. Then the school counselor. She looked nervous young, probably her first time testifying. Jennifer Parker walked her through routine questions about the girls' academic performance, social development, emotional health. All positive, all boring. Then the bomb dropped. 3 weeks ago, I was approached by Mr. Walker's assistant. They offered my supervisor $10,000 to file a report questioning Mr. Morrison's fitness as a parent. My supervisor refused. I'm here to testify the offer was made. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, one of Jake's students shouting, "What the hell?" before Principal Harris shushed them. Judge Reynolds's gavel cracked like thunder. Order, Mr. Walker, is this true? Richard's face had gone pale. Bradford scrambled through papers, buying time. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Judge Reynolds's tone could freeze lava. Attempting to bribe a school official to fabricate evidence is a misunderstanding. Your Honor, if I may, you may sit down, Mr. Bradford. She made notes, face carved from granite. Continue, Ms. Parker. Jennifer Parker stood. The defense calls Claire Bennett. Claire walked to the witness stand in a navy suit that struck perfect balance. Professional but not ostentatious, successful but not threatening. She met Jake's eyes for 1 second before sitting down, and he saw everything in that glance. I've got you. We've got this. Ms. Bennett, how long have you known the Morrison family? 8 months, since their high school reunion in October. And in that time, what have you observed about Mr. Morrison as a father? Claire pulled out a small leather journal. Jake had seen it before, thought it was for work. She opened it, and his breath caught. I started keeping notes, not for court, just for myself. To remember. Her voice stayed steady. November 12th, Jake woke at 5 a.m. to make 3 different lunches because each daughter likes different things. Lily won't eat crust. Mia's allergic to strawberries. Zoe only eats sandwiches cut diagonally. Bradford stood. Objection. Ms. Bennett has only known these children 8 months. That's hardly, Claire interrupted, looking directly at Judge Reynolds. You're right. I've only known them 8 months. But I know what love looks like. I know what showing up looks like. She flipped pages. December 3rd, Jake worked a double shift to afford Christmas presents, then stayed up until 2 a.m. assembling toys. December 24th, he made Christmas special with Dollar Tree decorations and homemade cookies because that's what he could afford. Her voice strengthened. January 15th, Zoe had nightmares. Jake slept on the floor of their room for a week until she felt safe. February 2nd. He learned a French braid from YouTube so Mia could have the hairstyle she wanted for school pictures. Jake's vision blurred. She'd been documenting everything. Every moment he thought went unnoticed, every small act of love he'd dismissed as just what fathers did, she'd seen it all and written it down. March 3rd, Lily's class did a writing assignment about heroes. She wrote about her dad, said he was her hero because he never gives up even when things are hard. Claire's voice cracked. March 18th, Jake missed a doctor's appointment because he was volunteering at the school science fair. Not for recognition, just because his daughters asked him to be there. "And what do you see when you look at this family?" Jennifer Parker asked quietly. "I see a man who's not wealthy, but he's rich in every way that matters. He's not perfect, but he's present." Claire looked at Jake, tears tracking down her face. "Those girls don't know they're poor. They know they're loved, and that's worth more than 7 bedrooms and a pool." The gallery was silent. One of Jake's students was crying. Mrs. Lopez dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Jake sat with tears streaming down his face, the second time in his life he'd cried in front of people, and he didn't care. This woman had seen him. Actually, seen him when the world looked through him or past him or down on him. Bradford tried to recover on cross-examination, but there was nowhere to go. Claire had documented months of devoted parenting with the precision she brought to corporate events. Every question he asked, she had a dated entry ready. "No further questions, Your Honor." Judge Reynolds called for recess. Jake stumbled to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, tried to pull himself together. Jennifer Parker found him there. "That was good, really good, but don't celebrate yet. Reynolds is tough. She'll deliberate carefully." "What are our chances?" "Better than they were 2 hours ago." She squeezed his shoulder. "The bribery attempt hurt them badly. And Claire's testimony," she shook her head. "I've been doing this 20 years. I've never seen anything like that." They returned to the courtroom. Judge Reynolds sat at her bench reviewing notes. The gallery fell silent. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. "I've reviewed all evidence and testimonies." Her voice carried across the room with absolute authority. "Mrs. Walker, I appreciate you've undergone therapy and are financially stable. However, you voluntarily terminated your parental rights 4 years ago. You haven't contacted these children, not a birthday card, not a phone call, in 4 years. She turned her attention to Richard. "The attempted bribery of a school official is deeply troubling and speaks to character. The court finds no evidence that Mr. Morrison's current situation causes harm to the children." Jake's heart hammered. Claire gripped his hand so tight it hurt. "Mr. Morrison, you have been these girls' sole parent. School records show they're thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. Witnesses testify to their happiness and security." Judge Reynolds raised her gavel. "I'm denying the petition for custody modification. Mr. Morrison remains the sole custodial parent. Mrs. Walker, if you genuinely wish a relationship with your daughters, I suggest you start slowly with letters, but I will not force these children into a relationship they've lived without." The gavel fell. Jake's legs went weak. Claire caught him, held him up as he sobbed into her shoulder, relief and gratitude, and 4 years of terror finally releasing. The gallery erupted in applause. Judge Reynolds didn't even try to quiet them. "They're safe," he whispered against Claire's neck. "Our girls are safe." She held him tighter. I know." Outside the courthouse, Phoenix June heat hit like a physical wall. Jake, Claire, and Carol descended the steps into brutal sunshine. Freedom. Victory. The future opening up like a door he'd thought was locked forever. This isn't over, Jake. Brittany blocked their path, Richard trailing behind her. Her composure had cracked makeup-smudged hands, shaking the polish finally worn through to whatever lay beneath. Yes, it is. You made your choice 4 years ago, Brittany. I'm their mother. No. His voice came out quiet but absolute. You were their mother. I'm their father. I was there when they were sick, when they had nightmares, when they learned to ride bikes, when they needed someone. He paused. Where were you? She had no answer. If you really care about them, if this isn't just about winning, write them letters. Tell them about yourself. Let them decide if they want to know you. But don't force this. Brittany lets go. Richard's hand on her shoulder, steering her away. They descended to a waiting Mercedes. Jake watched them drive away and felt something he hadn't expected: pity. She'd chosen money over love and would spend the rest of her life knowing exactly what she'd lost. You okay? Claire asked. My dad used to say, winning with grace is harder than winning with anger. I think I finally understand what he meant. They drove home. The girls were waiting with Mrs. Lopez. She'd kept them busy all day, shielding them from courtroom drama they were too young to carry. Jake walked in and was immediately tackled by 3 blonde tornadoes. Did you win? Lily demanded. We won. Does that mean we get to stay with you? Mia's voice was small. He knelt down, pulled them all close. You get to stay with me forever. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Zoe looked at Claire. And you're staying too, right? If you'll have me. 3 unanimous nods. That night, after the girls finally crashed from excitement and sugar and relief, Claire and Jake sat in his backyard, small patch of concrete and dying grass that passed for outdoor space in Maryvale. Stars visible through Phoenix light pollution if you looked hard enough. October, Claire said into the quiet. 1 year since the reunion. Feels like longer. Good longer or bad longer? He turned to her. Claire Bennett, will you marry me? She froze. What? I don't have a ring. I don't have money for a ring. But I have this. He took her hands. I have 3 daughters who love you. I have a life that's messy and broke and not what you deserve. But I love you. And I hope you love us back. Yes. She was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes, 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 you ridiculous man. Of course I'll marry you. Even with the broke part, the messy part, especially with those parts. She kissed him. Those are my favorite parts. From the window came 3 familiar voices. They're kissing again. They broke apart laughing. The girls pressed against the glass faces illuminated by kitchen light, joy radiating from every fiber. We should probably tell them, Claire said. They probably already know. Probably. She stood, pulled him up. But let's tell them anyway. They walked inside together into warmth and light and family, into the life they'd built from a moment of humiliation and a lie that became truth, into right now, which was all anyone ever really had. Monday afternoon arrived with the kind of clarity that follows storms. The sky stretched blue and endless over Williamsburg, everything washed clean, everything exposed. The county courthouse stood on limestone steps worn smooth by 100 years of footsteps. People had climbed these stairs for generations seeking justice. Some found it, most just found the law. Elena Rodriguez waited on the courthouse steps with Noah and Sophie. She'd kept the kids all morning. Fed them lunch. Kept their minds occupied with card games and silly stories. Now they sat beside her watching every car that pulled into the parking lot. Sophie's voice was small. Noah, do you think your dad likes my mom? Noah considered this with the seriousness of a judge reviewing evidence. He smiles when she's around. Like really smiles. Not the fake kind adults do when they're just being polite. He stopped looking sad all the time. My mom laughs now. She didn't laugh with Daddy. Ever. They should probably get married then. That's what people do when they make each other happy. Sophie looked up at Elena to see if adults were supposed to hear this conversation. Elena pretended to be very interested in her phone. Should we tell them? Noah shook his head. Nah, grown-ups are slow about this stuff. They'll figure it out. Jim and Tori arrived together in Jim's truck. Gerald Palmer pulled up right behind them in a sedan that had seen better decades. All business. All focus. Derek arrived separately. 3 lawyers in immaculate suits. Commanding presence. They moved like a unit that had conquered courtrooms from Chicago to Des Moines. Photographers from the Williamsburg Gazette were positioned on the courthouse lawn. The story had spread through town like fire through dry grass. Everyone knew. Everyone was watching. Derek saw Sophie on the steps. Started toward her. Jim stepped in his path. Leave her alone. Derek's lead lawyer, Charles Bradford, expensive and polished as a new penny, spoke up. Mr. Carson, you're not family. You have no standing. I'm a witness, and I'm asking you to leave the child alone until the judge makes her ruling. Stand off. 5 seconds that stretched like taffy. Derek backed off. Didn't want a scene on courthouse steps with cameras rolling. He could afford to wait. He had the law on his side. Or thought he did. Inside the courtroom filled fast. Family court wasn't usually a spectator sport, but word had gotten out. Half of Williamsburg showed up. Hardware store owners, factory workers, people who remembered when Blake Manufacturing kept the town alive through the recession. People who owed Jim Carson for honest work done at fair prices. Judge Eleanor Sampson entered. Everyone rose. She was 60 with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Sharp eyes that had seen every lie a parent could tell across 25 years on the bench. She sat. Everyone else sat. The hearing began. Charles Bradford presented Derek's case like a prosecutor building toward execution. Photos of Tori leaving work at midnight. Presented without context. Just images of a woman choosing career over child. Business trip records. 4 days over 6 months. Bradford made it sound like abandonment. Made it sound like Tori was never home. School events she'd missed. Parent-teacher conference rescheduled twice. One school play she'd had to skip because of a board meeting that ran late. Bradford painted a picture of a mother too busy for her own daughter. An expert witness testified. Psychologist who'd never met Sophie. Talked about the importance of stability, the risks of maternal absence. Used phrases like attachment disruption and developmental impact that sounded scientific but meant nothing. Derek sat looking concerned, playing the role of worried father to perfection. Tori gripped Gerald's arm, terrified. The courtroom was silent except for Bradford's voice building his case brick by brick. Then Gerald Palmer stood up. He was 65 and looked every year of it. Wore a suit that was 10 years out of style but pressed perfectly. He'd been practicing family law in Iowa since before most of these lawyers were born. He didn't waste time. Your Honor, if I may address Mr. Bradford's evidence point by point. The midnight photos. Tori working late to secure contracts that saved 50 jobs, not abandoning her daughter, saving the livelihoods of 50 families in this county. The business trips. 4 days total. Sophie stayed with her grandmother during those trips, Derek's own mother, who'd refused to testify for him today. Gerald made sure the judge noticed that detail. The missed events. 2 out of 47 school events over the past year. Gerald had attendance records. Tori had been present for 45 events. Spring concert, science fair, every parent-teacher conference except one, field day, Halloween parade, winter program. Bradford tried to object. Gerald rolled over him like a combine through wheat. Now let's discuss what Mr. Manning's own evidence doesn't show. It doesn't show that he attended any of those 45 events Ms. Blake attended. It doesn't show him at baseball practice or dance recitals or any of the daily moments that actually constitute parenting. It shows surveillance photos taken by investigators he hired, documentation of his ex-wife's movements, not documentation of his own fatherhood. Gerald paused. Let that sink in. And now, Your Honor, I'd like to play Video Exhibit C. The courtroom screen lit up. Security footage from Sunday morning. Timestamp visible. Derek's Mercedes pulling up to Jim's house. Derek getting out with bodyguards. The footage showed everything. Derek demanding Sophie come to him. Sophie pressing close to Noah, refusing to move. Derek's voice getting harder. The mask slipping. She's my daughter, Tori blocking his view. Derek taking aggressive steps toward the porch. Jim positioning himself between Derek and the children. Then the threats. Clear as daylight. Recorded by 4 different cameras. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Your little electrician friend, his business, his reputation all gone. Sophie will be living with me in Chicago by next month. Count on it. The final piece cell phone video from Linda Morrison, shot from across the street, captured Derek's face when the mask dropped completely. Pure venom. Sophie audibly crying in the background. The courtroom was dead silent when the video ended. Judge Sampson's face remained neutral, but her eyes were ice. Gerald submitted written statements. 6 neighbors, all describing Tori's attentive parenting, Sophie's visible happiness with her mother, the transformation in the child over just 3 days of feeling safe. Martha Patterson's statement described watching Tori teach Sophie to check tire pressure on a truck. Patient, kind, present. The Davis family described hearing Sophie laugh for the first time in the weeks they'd been watching the situation unfold. Bradford tried to recover, argued stress, unusual circumstances. His client was simply a concerned father. Judge Sampson cut him off. Counselor, your client thinks threatening a child's mother in front of that child demonstrates good judgment and parental fitness. Bradford fumbled, started to answer, stopped, started again. The judge didn't wait for him to find words. I've presided over family court for 25 years. I've seen every manipulation and lie that wealthy parents can devise to gain advantage in custody disputes. I've seen children used as weapons, parental alienation, false abuse allegations, financial warfare designed to exhaust and destroy. She looked directly at Derek. Mr. Manning, your money doesn't impress me. Your behavior frightens me. And more importantly, it frightens your daughter. That is what this court cares about. Bradford tried one more time. Your Honor, if we could provide context. The context is clear. Motion denied. She didn't stop there. I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Manning's use of private investigators to harass Ms. Blake. I'm noting for the record that his behavior demonstrates concerning lack of judgment regarding his child's well-being and an inability to control aggressive impulses. Derek's face went purple. Primary custody remains with Victoria Blake. Review hearing in 6 weeks. Until then, Mr. Manning will have supervised visitation only. 2 hours twice monthly. Supervised by a court-appointed guardian. Derek stood up, started to object. Loud, angry. His lawyers grabbed his arms, pulled him back down, whispered urgently in his ears. Judge Sampson watched this display with visible satisfaction. Mr. Manning, are you demonstrating for me the emotional control you believe qualifies you for primary custody? Derek sat rigid with fury, said nothing. That's what I thought. And one more thing, Mr. Manning will undergo parenting evaluation and anger management assessment before the next review hearing. Failure to comply will result in suspension of all visitation rights. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Tori collapsed, crying. Not despair. Relief so complete it overwhelmed every defense she'd built. Gerald hugged her. We won the battle. Stay vigilant. He'll appeal, but you're safe for now. Jim waited by his truck with Noah and Sophie. Sophie saw her mother, ran to her. "Can we go home now, Mommy?" Tori scooped her up. "Yes, baby, we can go home." Sophie ran to Jim next, hugged his leg. "You kept your promise. Daddy didn't take me." Jim picked her up. First time he'd held her. "I told you. These hands don't break promises." Sophie looked at him seriously. "Can I call you Uncle Jim?" Tears filled Jim's eyes. He didn't hide them. "I'd like that very much." Derek exited the courthouse, didn't look at any of them, got in his Mercedes in silence. His lawyers looked defeated, worried about their own reputations after that performance. The photographer from the Williamsburg Gazette got the shot. Derek looking furious. Then another shot. Tori holding Sophie, both of them smiling. The headline would write itself. 6 months passed like seasons through Iowa farmland. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. Life rebuilt itself brick by brick. April brought warmth back to Williamsburg. Trees budded on Main Street. Flowers bloomed in yards that had been gray all winter. Little League started up. Kids in uniforms too big for them learning to catch and throw and hit. Tori returned to Blake Manufacturing part-time, 3 days a week. Sarah Mitchell, her VP, competent and steady, ran daily operations. The board meeting where Tori presented quarterly results ended with applause. She left early to pick Sophie up from school. Nobody treated her like CEO anymore at the school. Just Sophie's mom. Just another parent in the pickup line. It was the best promotion she'd ever received. Derek accepted the revised custody agreement. Supervised visitation twice monthly. His legal team advised him that any further action would make things worse. The judge had made her position clear. The public record was damning. Tori watched one of those supervised visits through a two-way mirror at the Family Services Center. Mrs. Thompson, the supervisor older woman with kind but firm presence, took detailed notes. Sophie was polite with Derek. Distant. No longer afraid but not affectionate either. She answered his questions with 1 or 2 words. Showed him a drawing she'd made in art class. Let him read her a story. But when the 2 hours ended, she was ready to leave. Derek tried to hug her goodbye. Sophie allowed it but didn't return it. Just stood there tolerating his arms around her until he let go. "I love you, Sophie." "Okay." That was all. No, "I love you too." No tears. Just a child who'd learned that some people use love as a weapon, and the best defense is emotional distance. Mrs. Thompson noted everything. Sophie and Noah became inseparable. Same school bus every morning. Ate lunch at the same table. Did homework together at Jim's kitchen counter while he cooked dinner and Tori helped with math problems she'd forgotten since high school. They fought like siblings, argued about which movie to watch, competed over who could climb the oak tree faster, made up within 5 minutes, and went back to being best friends. Tori rented a small apartment 5 minutes from Jim's house, walking distance. She learned to cook, burned rice regularly, overcooked pasta, laughed at her own failures. Sophie helped measure ingredients, and Jim taught them both that cooking was just chemistry with better results than science class. She attended every school event, sat in bleachers at baseball games, stood in the audience for the fall choir concert. Nobody asked her for donations. Nobody wanted anything from her except to pass the popcorn during the game. The local newspaper ran the story under the headline, "Judge, Sampson rules against Chicago billionaire in custody dispute." Regional business news picked it up. Partners began quietly distancing themselves from Derek Manning. His company stock dipped 3%, not enough to hurt him financially, just enough to hurt his pride. Tori sold the mansion. 7 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, too big, too empty, too full of memories she was trying to escape. The sale price was $2.3 million. She donated every penny. The news anchor's voice played on the TV in Jim's living room while he was fixing the kitchen sink. In an unexpected move, Blake Manufacturing CEO Victoria Blake donated the entire proceeds from her property sale to St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The donation establishes the Sarah Carson Memorial Fund for maternity care and support for single parents. Jim's hand stopped mid-turn on the wrench. He stood up, walked to the living room, stood there with his hand over his mouth, staring at the screen. Tori appeared in the doorway behind him. Sarah's name should live on helping other mothers, helping other families facing the worst days of their lives. I wanted something good to come from that place. Jim couldn't speak, just looked at her. This woman who'd knocked on his door 6 months ago had honored his dead wife better than anyone in 7 years, had taken her own pain and transformed it into help for strangers she'd never meet. Saturday afternoon in October, sunshine golden through autumn leaves. Jim was teaching Noah how to change oil in the truck. Father and son working together, hands side by side on tools older than Noah. Why do we do it ourselves instead of taking it somewhere? Because you need to understand how things work, how to take care of what you depend on. Your grandfather taught me that. Now I'm teaching you. Noah nodded seriously, crawled under the truck on the creeper board. Jim supervised, pointing out where the drain plug was, how to position the pan, how not to burn yourself on hot oil. Sophie and Tori walked up the driveway together. Sophie carried a basket of muffins she'd helped bake, lopsided frosting but made with pride. Tori carried an envelope. She handed it to Jim without explanation. Inside was the deed to the mansion. Before it sold, documentation showing the donation, certificate showing the Sarah Carson Memorial Fund established, details about what it would provide, free maternity care for mothers who couldn't afford it, support groups for single parents, emergency assistance for families facing medical crisis. Jim looked at the papers, looked at Tori, looked at the kids racing toward the backyard arguing about who could climb higher in the oak tree. He did something he hadn't done in 7 years. Reached out and took Tori's hand. She didn't pull away. They stood in the driveway, 2 people who'd survived their own storms, watching their children play in afternoon light. Noah called from the backyard. Dad, Sophie wants to know if she can climb to the 3rd branch. Same rules as always. 3 branches max, test every branch before you trust it. Sophie's laughter mixed with Noah's, rising through autumn air like music. Jim squeezed Tori's hand. You know, I've been thinking about, there's a place in town, Miller's Diner, makes decent meatloaf and apple pie. If you wanted to have dinner sometime, just us, like a date. Tori smiled. Real, private, fragile but growing stronger. I'd like that very much. More laughter from the backyard. Louder now. Noah, watch this jump. Sophie, wait, be careful. More laughter. No crash. Jim looked at Tori. Think we better supervise before someone breaks an arm. Together. Yeah, together. They walked hand in hand toward the backyard. The house behind them needed painting. Life wasn't perfect, never would be, but it was good. It was theirs. The memorial fund grew over the next year. Other donations came in. People who'd heard the story. People who'd lost someone to complications that could have been prevented with better care. People who wanted to help. By the 2nd anniversary, Sarah's name had helped deliver 63 healthy babies, supported 40 families through crisis, provided grief counseling for 21 single parents trying to raise children alone. Jim took Noah to the hospital on the anniversary. They stood in the lobby where a plaque hung on the wall. Sarah Carson Memorial Fund established 2025, in memory of a mother, teacher, and friend helping families find hope in their darkest hours. Noah read it quietly. Mom would have liked this. Yeah, she would have. Do you think she'd be okay with Miss Tori? Jim looked at his son. 9 years old, going on 40, with that serious expression. I think your mom would want us to be happy. I think she'd be glad Sophie and her mom had somewhere safe to go. I think she'd tell me to stop hiding and start living again and all. Noah nodded. Considered this. I like Sophie. She asks weird questions, but she's smart. And Miss Tori makes really good pancakes now that you taught her. Yeah, she does. They stood there another minute. Then Noah spoke again. It's okay if you love her, Dad. I won't be mad or anything. Mom's gone. We can't bring her back. But we can be happy. That's what you told me when I asked why you were sad all the time. Jim's throat tightened. His son was teaching him now. The circle completing itself. When'd you get so wise? I've been 9 for 6 months. I know stuff now. Jim laughed, pulled Noah into a hug. 3 months later, Jim and Tori got married in the backyard under the oak tree. Small ceremony. Judge Sampson officiated. Seemed fitting after everything. Noah was best man. Sophie was flower girl. She took the job seriously. Scattered petals with precision that would have made a surveyor proud. Martha Patterson cried. Elena Rodriguez cried. Frank Morrison tried not to cry and failed. Half of Williamsburg showed up, brought casseroles and congratulations and stories about Jim's father and Tori's grandfather and how some things were just meant to be. Jim wore his father's watch, the one that had been in the family 3 generations. Tori wore her grandmother's necklace, something old connecting them to people they'd loved and lost. When Judge Sampson asked if they took each other, Tori spoke first. I take this man who opened his door on the worst night of my life, who taught my daughter that safety isn't about walls or money, it's about hands that keep promises and hearts that choose kindness over fear. I take him completely. Jim's voice was steady. I take this woman who reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living, who honored my wife's memory better than I ever could, who taught me that opening your heart again doesn't dishonor what you lost. It honors what you learned. I take her completely. The kiss was simple, sweet, not passionate, but deeply felt, the kind that speaks of partnership more than romance, of choosing each other every day, of building something together that neither could build alone. Sophie and Noah cheered loudest. Derek didn't contest the custody arrangement, didn't appeal. His quarterly visits continued under supervision. He showed up, went through the motions, but the connection he'd once had with Sophie, whatever it had been, was severed. You can't force love, can't threaten it into existence, can't buy it with money or lawyers or carefully calculated displays of concern. Sophie grew up knowing 2 fathers, one who'd given her life, one who'd taught her what life could be. She never forgot the difference. 10 years later, Sophie stood in Jim's garage helping him rewire a classic truck someone had brought in for restoration. Her hands were sure with tools, confident with electrical systems. She was 17 now, planning to study engineering at Iowa State. Already had a partial scholarship from the Sarah Carson Memorial Fund that had expanded to include educational support. Uncle Jim, yeah, kid, why'd you help us that night? Really? You didn't know us. Mom says you barely knew her father. You could have called the police or told us to go to a hotel, but you opened your door in the middle of a storm to total strangers. Jim set down his wire strippers, looked at Sophie, saw the scared 7-year-old she'd been, saw the confident young woman she was becoming. My father taught me something. He said that storms destroy things, but sometimes they create things too. A door opened on a terrible night can lead to mornings worth waking for. You and your mom knocked on my door when I'd been closed up for 7 years. Dead inside, but still breathing. You reminded me that being alive means more than just not dying. Sophie nodded, understood more than he expected. I'm glad you opened the door. Me too, kid. Me too. They went back to work, father and daughter by choice, if not by blood, building something together, fixing what was broken, making old things work again. The evening sky turned orange and gold. Noah pulled up in his own truck, home from community college. studying to be a teacher like his mother. He had Sarah's patience, her gift for making people feel like they mattered. Tori's car arrived right behind him. She'd been at the factory, still CEO, still 3 days a week, still leaving early for the things that mattered more than quarterly reports. They all went inside together, family dinner around a table that wasn't big enough but was exactly the right size, talking over each other, laughing, arguing about nothing important, being together. This was home, not the building, not the address, the people inside it, the ones who chose each other, the ones who stayed when things got hard, the ones who opened doors when storms raged outside. On the mantel above the fireplace, 2 photos stood side by side. Sarah Carson holding newborn Noah, Jim's father in his electrical company uniform from 1985. They were honored, remembered, part of everything this family had become. But they weren't the whole story anymore. The whole story was still being written, still being lived, still being built one day at a time by people who'd learned that storms destroy things. But sometimes, just sometimes, they create something better than what came before. Claire's condo smelled like garlic and tomatoes Sunday dinner simmering, while October sunset painted Camelback Mountain in shades of amber and rose. Jake arrived with the girls at 6, their overnight bags slung over shoulders, because they spent weekends here now, in this space that had gradually become theirs, without anyone making a formal announcement about it. Claire. 3 voices chorused the moment the door opened. She caught them in a practiced hug, one that suggested months of repetition of building muscle memory around love. Go put your stuff in your room. I need to show your dad something. They scattered their room, not the guest room anymore. Jake watched them go, still marveling at how naturally Claire had woven herself into the fabric of their lives. No grand gestures, just consistent presence day after day until she became necessary as breathing. She led him to the kitchen island, slid her laptop across granite countertops that still made him nervous to touch. Real estate listing glowed on screen, 4-bedroom house in Tempe Good School District, backyard with actual grass, $380,000. His teacher salary didn't cover the first digit. It's beautiful, but Claire, I can't afford. I can. I have enough for down payment. Mortgage would be manageable with both our incomes. Both our incomes. You're talking about moving in together, yes. She met his eyes steadily. Making this official. I can't let you buy us a house. You're not letting me. We're partners. She took his hands. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. His throat closed. You turned down the Walker contract for me. Rebecca said you lost other clients. I can't let you sacrifice your business. It's not sacrifice, Jake. Her voice carried absolute certainty. That contract would have cost $200,000. You know what it would have cost me, you. The girls, this family. No amount of money is worth that. But your business, my business will recover. I'll find new clients. She squeezed his hands. But I'll never find another you. Another Lily, Mia, Zoe. This is my choice. Let me make it. He studied her face, the woman who'd rescued him. Fought for him, chosen him, when the world said he wasn't worth choosing. His father's voice echoed, a good woman sees you when you can't see yourself. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He dropped to one knee right there in her kitchen. No ring, no plan, just love that couldn't wait another second. Then marry me first, properly. Let me stand up in front of everyone and say you're mine before we buy that house. She pulled him up, kissed him hard. Yes. Let's buy the house. Let's get married. Let's do all of it. From the hallway. They're kissing again. We're getting married, Zoe shouted, and suddenly all 3 girls were there jumping and screaming and asking 10,000 questions about dresses and flowers and when and could they be flower girls. Jake looked at Claire over their heads. She was crying and laughing and nodding yes to every question the girls threw at her. This This was what winning looked like. April in Phoenix meant perfect wedding weather, mid-70s, zero chance of rain, desert blooming with impossible color. The Desert Botanical Garden Chapel held 30 guests maximum. They'd invited 28. Carol Morrison in the front row dabbing her eyes. Rebecca Stone, Claire's business partner, who'd worried and warned but showed up anyway. Principal Harris, Mrs. Lopez in her Sunday best, former students who'd become friends, the people who mattered. Lily, Mia, and Zoe wore matching lavender dresses and couldn't stop giggling. They'd practiced walking down the aisle 17 times, but Jake knew they'd still run it. That was fine. Everything about this day was perfect in its imperfection. Claire walked down the aisle alone, no father to give her away, because she was giving herself, which was the whole point. Simple white dress, desert flowers woven into her hair, confidence in every step. She'd built a business from nothing. She'd fought a billionaire and won. She'd chosen love over money. Walking down an aisle was easy compared to that. The officiant began. Jake barely heard the words. He was looking at Claire at his daughters in the front row, practically vibrating with excitement at the life they were about to make official. "Jake, your vows." He'd written them at midnight 2 weeks ago, sitting at his kitchen table with Claire asleep in his bed. 18 months ago, you saved me in a moment when I felt small and worthless. You reminded me that worth isn't measured in dollars or job titles or zip codes. He looked at his daughters. You've loved my daughters like they're your own. You've shown up every single day. You fought for us when we couldn't fight for ourselves. His voice steadied. I promise to love you fiercely, to support your dreams the way you've supported mine, to be your partner in all things, and to never let you forget how incredible you are. Claire, your vows. She smiled through tears. Jake, 18 years ago, I fell for a boy who wrote about love with such beauty. I never forgot it. He wrote that the real tragedy of Romeo and Juliet wasn't their deaths. It was that they were brave enough to love, but the world wasn't brave enough to let them. Jake's vision blurred. You're the bravest person I know. You showed up for your daughters when their mother walked away. You showed up at that reunion even though you were scared. You showed up for me when I needed someone real. Her voice strengthened. I promise to stand beside you, to love your daughters as my own, to build a life that's rich in all the ways that matter, and to stay. Always. I promise to stay. He was crying openly now, third time in public, and he'd stopped caring somewhere around the custody hearing. Crying didn't make you weak. Pretending you didn't hurt did. By the power vested in me, they're married. All 3 girls shouted in perfect synchronization. Laughter rippled through the chapel. The officiant gave up. I guess they are. You may kiss your bride. He did. She tasted like salt and joy and promises kept. The reception was outdoors under string lights strung between saguaro cacti. Former students gave speeches about how Mr. Morrison had changed their lives, had seen potential in them when nobody else did. Principal Harris toasted, the best teacher I've ever worked with. Rebecca Stone warned Claire she was stuck with this family now O'Baxies. Then the girls took the microphone. Lily read first voice clear and serious. Daddy was sad after our first mommy left. We didn't understand why then. We were only 3. Mia picked up the next card. But then Claire came to Daddy's reunion, and she made him smile again. Then she made us smile too. Zoe finished. Today we're not just getting a new mom. We're making our family official. And that's the best thing ever. Lily looked at Claire directly. Thank you for seeing our daddy when he couldn't see himself. Thank you for loving us even though you didn't have to, Mia added. Thank you for staying, Zoe said simply. We love you, all 3 shouted together. The garden erupted in applause. Claire was sobbing. Jake was sobbing. Carol Morrison had gone through 3 tissues. Even Rebecca looked misty. Then a FedEx courier appeared weaving through tables with a large envelope. Jake Morrison, I have a delivery. Jake's stomach dropped. Who sent FedEx to a wedding reception? He took the envelope, saw the return address. Brittany Walker. His hands shook opening it. Inside a check for $50,000 and a letter on expensive stationery. Jake. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I owe you an apology. At the reunion, I tried to humiliate you. I wanted everyone to see I'd won by leaving you. But watching you with Claire over the past year, I realized I didn't win anything. I lost everything. I lost 3 daughters who will never know me, who have a mother now, Claire, who loves them the way I never could. The enclosed check is 4 years of child support I never paid. It's not enough. It will never be enough. I'm not asking for a relationship with the girls. I've realized that ship has sailed. But I wanted you to know you were right about everything. Be happy, Jake. You deserve it. Brittany. Claire read it over his shoulder. What are you going to do? He folded the letter, tucked it back in the envelope with the check. Cash it. Put it in their college fund. And move on. You're not angry. I was. For a long time. He looked across the garden at their guests, at the life they'd built. But now, I'm just grateful. She left and that made room for you. Claire kissed his temple. Best thing she ever did for all of us. They walked back to the reception hand in hand, leaving Brittany's apology in the past where it belonged. 3 months later, they stood in an empty living room in Tempe. 4 bedrooms, actual backyard neighborhood where kids rode bikes on sidewalks without parental escorts. The mortgage made Jake's stomach hurt every time he thought about it. But Claire had been right with both incomes. It was manageable. Barely, but manageable. The girls raced through empty rooms, claiming bedrooms, voices echoing off bare walls. Jake and Claire carried boxes from the U-Haul, assembling furniture, hanging pictures, building a home from possibility and sweat equity. First family dinner happened on the kitchen floor because they hadn't assembled the table yet. Pizza from boxes, paper plates, laughter echoing off walls that would learn to expect it. That evening, Jake stood in the backyard watching sunset paint the sky. Grass needed mowing, fence needed repair, but it was theirs. Actually, legally, officially, theirs. Claire found him there, wrapped her arms around him from behind. Happy, terrified. Of what? This feels too good, like it's going to disappear, like I'm going to wake up in that apartment in Maryvale and this will all have been a dream. She turned him to face her. It's not disappearing. This is real. This is ours. How do I believe that because I'm here, because I chose this life, I choose it every day? Her voice turned fierce. Stop waiting for me to realize I made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. I found my family. Something shifted in his chest. Something that had been clenched tight for 4 years, maybe longer. My dad used to say, a good woman sees you when you can't see yourself. What do you see now? He looked at the house. Their house at the girls', visible through kitchen windows, at Claire's face backlit by fading sunlight. I see I was always enough. I just needed someone brave enough to show me. She kissed him. The girls started knocking on the window, making faces, ruining the moment in the best possible way. Come on, Claire said, pulling him toward the house. Your daughters want to show you their rooms for the 17th time. Our daughters, he corrected. Her smile could have powered the city. 5 years after the reunion, Jake stood backstage at Lincoln Middle School's auditorium, trying not to throw up. Teacher of the Year for Maricopa County District. 1,500 teachers in the district, and somehow they'd chosen him. You're going to be fine. Principal Harris adjusted Jake's tie like he was one of the students. Just speak from the heart. That's all you ever do anyway. The auditorium was packed. Claire sat front row center with the girls 12 years old now, on the edge of teenagerhood, but still his babies. Carol Morrison beside them, Rebecca Stone, Mrs. Lopez. Former students scattered throughout adults, now themselves, some with kids of their own. Please welcome this year's recipient, Jake Morrison. Applause crashed over him as he walked to the podium. The plaque was heavy in his hands, engraved with words about excellence and dedication and impact. He set it down carefully and looked at his family. Thank you. This award belongs to more than just me. It belongs to every student who trusted me with their stories, every parent who believed I could help their children. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. 5 years ago, I almost skipped my high school reunion. I was embarrassed about my life, about my old car, my worn clothes, what I didn't have. His voice carried across the silent auditorium. That night, someone tried to make me feel small, tried to humiliate me for being a teacher, for living modestly, for choosing my daughters over money. He found Claire's eyes. But someone else saw me differently. She saw past the old car and worn clothes to the person underneath. She chose me anyway. She chose my daughters. She chose our chaotic, imperfect, beautiful life. His voice strengthened. My father taught me that showing up matters more than showing off, that the richest life isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in love, in family, in moments that matter, that the work we do with our hands and hearts is worth more than any bank account. He picked up the plaque. So this award is really for her, for the woman who taught me that worth isn't measured in bank accounts or zip codes, that family isn't about biology, that the richest life is one filled with love. He looked at his daughters, Lily, Mia, Zoe, growing up brave and kind and certain of their worth. Thank you. But the real prize is sitting in the front row. The auditorium erupted. His students, former and current, were on their feet. Claire was crying. The girls were beaming. Carol Morrison looked proud enough to burst. Jake walked off stage into Claire's arms. She held him tight while the applause continued. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I'm proud of us. The parking lot was mostly empty by the time they left. October evening temperature, perfect stars starting to emerge through Phoenix light pollution. They walked to their SUV 2025 Toyota Highlander, reliable and boring, and exactly what a family of 5 needed. Daddy, do you ever think about that night? Zoe asked, walking between them. The reunion? Sometimes. Are you glad it happened? Lily wanted to know. Even the bad parts. He stopped at the car, looked at all 3 daughters, his daughters, Claire's daughters, their daughters, looked at the plaque in his hand, looked at the life they'd built from humiliation and lies that became truth. Especially the bad parts. They led me here. To us? Mia asked. To all of us, Claire answered. They climbed into the car. Jake started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot into Phoenix evening traffic. The school shrank in his rearview mirror, the place where he'd taught for 15 years, where he'd impacted hundreds of lives, where he'd learned that showing up was the most important thing you could do. 5 years ago, I stood in a different parking lot, ashamed of my life, certain I wasn't enough. His voice carried over the radio's quiet hum. I was wrong. You're the best daddy in the world, Lily said from the back seat. I'd always been enough, he continued. I just needed someone brave enough to see it. Claire saw you, Zoe said matter-of-factly. You all saw me. You 3 saw me first. They drove home through streets Jake had traveled 1,000 times, past the apartment in Maryvale, where they'd struggled, past Lincoln Middle School, where he'd built his legacy, past the courthouse, where they'd fought for their family, toward the house in Tempe, where love lived in every room. Claire's hand found his on the center console, squeezed. He squeezed back. The work of building a life together was never finished. Tomorrow he'd wake up and make 3 different lunches because each daughter liked different things. He'd grade papers and answer emails and show up for students who needed someone to see them. Claire would run Bennett Event Solutions, rebuilding the client list she'd sacrificed, proving that choosing love didn't mean abandoning success. The girls would navigate middle school with all its complications. Life would continue being messy and difficult and expensive, but they'd do it together. That was the only thing that mattered. They pulled into their driveway. The grass still needed mowing. The fence still needed repair. But light glowed in the window's home waiting for them. His father's voice echoed one last time. The bravest thing a man can do is show up. Jake had shown up to that reunion 5 years ago, scared and ashamed. He was leaving this parking lot grateful and whole. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best things. Sometimes being humiliated was the first step to being seen. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, the woman who saved you became the woman who stayed. They walked inside together into warmth and light and laughter, into the life they'd built from nothing, into forever, which started right now. The door closed behind them. The porch light glowed. The house held them all 5 people who chose each other, who showed up for each other, who proved that worth couldn't be measured in square footage or stock portfolios. Love was the only currency that mattered, and they were rich beyond measure.